Hey, Dallas Baptist Church, this is Pastor Scott speaking, and as you can see, I am filming from the sanctuary. Let me move around slowly so I don't make you too seasick as I turn around. So as I filmed this is Wednesday, the 20th, and we're hopefully going to have service in here on the 24th, and hopefully won't get anybody sick. We're going to try to take precautions. But I want to share a little devotional with you, and this is not really a bit of hope or some sort of consolation, but it's a little something to think about. Yesterday, I found out about the death of a Christian apologist guy named Ravi Zacharias. He was actually about my mom's age, so not very old, but he died of cancer in Atlanta. He wrote over 30 books. He was involved in the Billy Graham Evangelistic Association in the early 80s. He's one of the largest voices in Christian apologetics. And you may ask yourself the question, what's apologetics? Maybe familiar with the word apology, but it's not necessarily it. Apologetics has to do with the Greek word apologia, which means to kind of give a defense of, to defend. It's entered into the Latin and into the English. And essentially, apologetics means to defend one's faith. And here's one definition here. The rational defense of Christian faith. Historically, apologetic arguments of various types have been given. Philosophical arguments for the existence of God, arguments that the existence of God is compatible with suffering and evil, historical arguments such as arguments from miracles and fulfilled prophecies, and arguments from religious experience, including mystical experience. That's a definition from a pocket dictionary of apologetics. Essentially, apologetics is defending one's faith rationally, defending one's faith in a very logical format, using philosophy, evidence, proving the creation story of Genesis is apologetics in some ways, proving Jesus rose from the dead, using evidence and things, that's apologetics. In fact, one book, it's the, if I can find the reference here, Dan Story's book, Engaging the Closed-Minded, Presenting Your Faith to the Confirmed Unbeliever. He writes this: an important principle of apologetics, quote, having the knowledge to intellectually combat and defend non-Christian religions and philosophies is not enough. It's also necessary to debate the issues and present Christian perspective in such a way that unbelievers will understand and defend. Now, behind apologetics for the most part, and behind especially this last definition or this last quote I gave you, is this notion of almost combating, defending, taking a jab at using logic, philosophy. I'm not a big fan of apologetics for the sense that a lot of it deals with having to use logic and philosophy and dates and factualities and certainties. That's not really faith. And most of us, we really can't prove that Jesus rose from the dead, but we believe it in our heart, right? Last Sunday we had a sermon on sharing your testimony, giving your testimony, and talking about how, people can debate the Bible and the facts about the Bible, but they really can't debate your story because, your personal experience. Let's talk about faith a little bit. Faith is not always the easiest thing for us in this world. A lot of times we want facts. We want we want proof. We want substance. We want evidence, we want, what I jokingly tell people sometimes, I won't believe in Bigfoot or aliens until I see them holding a newspaper with a date and have a signed affidavit from a notary public saying that they're real. That's how we kind of treat things in our society. But, faith, here's a definition, a technical definition from the Pocket Dictionary of Theology. Quote, faith is a biblical word that refers to intellectual belief and relational trust or commitment. Biblical authors generally do not make a distinction between faith as belief and faith as trust, but tend to see true faith as consisting of both what is believed and personal commitment to a person who is trustworthy, reliable, and able to save, end quote. So talking about faith, there's two little components here to think about. It's kind of what we believe, the substance of it. And we see this a lot in the pastoral epistles, Timothy, Titus, and this kind of notion of the faith being a set of beliefs. Orthodoxy, maybe, there is a virgin birth. There's a lot of things a lot of evangelicals cling to. That's very important. That Jesus rose from the dead, that's a kind of a base belief, a part of the faith. But faith is that trust as well, isn't it? It's that kind of feeling, a gut feeling, if not a spiritual conviction, that God is real, that God is working. In fact, the kind of the go-to verse when talking about faith is Hebrews chapter 11, verse 1. I'm reading from the King James here. Now faith is the substance of things hoped for and the evidence of things not seen. One more time. Now faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. I heard Billy Graham one time put it this way. I can't prove that God exists. I can't see God literally working. I don't see his hand literally reaching down and working every day in my life. But I can feel the effects of it. And then I make a faith statement that I see that God's working in these moments. Like, for example, I can't feel gravity pulling down on me literally. I don't see gravity grabbing me, but I know it's there. I know I'm not floating off into space. I can't literally see the wind, but I can see the effects of wind blowing leaves and blowing the trees. And that's kind of how it is with God. We know that there's something more. We have evidence of things not seen, the God working in our life. In fact, Hebrews 11 kind of goes into, Hebrews in general goes into this discussion of these heroes of the faith, those that lived by faith and did things by faith. Here's another translation of that. We probably know the King James from memory, but here's the good news, kind of elucidates things a little more about this notion of faith in Hebrews 11. To have faith is to be sure of things we hope for. To be sure. We know it. To be certain of things we cannot see. We can't prove it, but we know it's true. We can't prove that God exists. We can't prove that Jesus died on the cross, but we know it's true because of what he's done in our life. You see, I don't really like apologetics for the most part, is because it deals with certainty. And a lot of times the Bible isn't very certain, is it? Think about this. Noah was a crazy man because he built a boat. He heard a voice of God. People thought he was crazy. One of my favorite movies is the Evan Almighty movie, and some of y'all may have seen me reference those clips before. And check out the movie. It's a really interesting take on what Noah may have felt from a modern perspective. It's really cute, but people thought Evan Almighty, or Evan was crazy, Evan Baxter, the movie. People probably thought Noah was crazy because they couldn't see this God. They never met this God before, but he'd heard from him. He felt him. He knew he was true. What about Abraham? Stepped out on faith and moved from his family and his homeland to a land that he was promised. It took faith. He didn't have evidence. He didn't know where he was going. Wasn't proven. Moses stepped out on faith by leading the people. Didn't know exactly where he was going. Didn't know how they were going to get there. God took care of them, gave them manna, gave them sustenance, protected them. You see, life isn't always certain, is it? And in fact, we don't even know for certain that we're going to have worship on Sunday. Part of it depends on, I think, on the perspective of the governor and his orders, but I have a sneaking suspicion we'll have it, but we don't know for certain, do we? I know we're trying to set a date for the Live Embers yard sale, but we don't know anything for certain. Life isn't about certainty. You see, the sad thing is we live in we live in a world that's kind of at odds. We have, philosophically, we live in a postmodern world that's both postmodern and modern. Now, what do I mean by that? Modernity is a philosophical perspective that deals a lot in facts and data, very prevalent in the early 20th century, into the 20th century, and even today. A lot of people want facts. They want data. They want certainty. They want proof. But the world we're ever increasing into is a postmodern world. It doesn't start with facts. It doesn't really need facts. You see, the sad thing is postmodern world doesn't need certainty. Facts aren't a starting point. In fact, sometimes facts and certainty are a no-go. And that's one of the things we wrestle with as Christians is how do we wrestle with this? How do we reach a world that's ever increasingly postmodern when we're stuck maybe in the modes of modernity, modes of certainty? We're trying to prove our faith. We just believe. We don't have to have faith to believe. That's something we need to think about when we talk to others about faith, about Jesus. Can't prove it. I can't prove by data. I can't prove empirically that Jesus exists or that God is working in my life, but I can show you what I think I see God working in my, or how I see God working in my life. It's faith. The substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. I encourage you all to have faith in the midst of this pandemic, but I encourage you also to share your faith with others. We can't prove the things of God. It's faith. It's a faith thing. But we can tell our story. One of the things I hope to do maybe eventually this year is maybe talk about, on Wednesday nights especially, talking about sharing our testimony, witnessing, evangelism in a postmodern world. How do we relate to this world? It's ever increasingly postmodern when we're thinking about things like apologetics and things of modernity. But anyway, some things to think about. I encourage y'all to have faith. You don't need certainty, just have faith.